You are living in a country where every street corner screams poverty, every leader screams development, and yet the only development you can see is how creatively the government invents excuses for failure. Now add to that a society where almost every man is either a drunk, a cheat, a wife-beater, or just plain dumb. And congratulations, you've entered the world of Smouldering Charcoal. This book tries to balance between political disillusionment and social commentary, but in the process, it also feels like a training manual for how not to be a man. So buckle up, because today, we're diving into a novel that's equal parts depressing, frustrating, and somehow unintentionally funny. We meet two couples, two households really, living in this unnamed African country. On one side, you have Chola and Catherine, the middle-class intellectuals. Chola is a journalist, a Bintu. That's just a fancy word for someone who studied abroad and came back with big ideas. He's frustrated because in his country, corruption is called development. His reports to the editor often sound more like activist manifestos than news, and his editor is not amused.
Is this fun for you?
Catherine, his girlfriend, is a final-year university student. She's sharp, intelligent, and absolutely unimpressed by the traditional nonsense that keeps women boxed in. Together, they're the poster children for young, educated Africans who want change. But Chola is a pacifist, and Catherine, well, she's not so patient. They plan to marry after she graduates. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Then, miles away from their middle-class life, we meet Mchere and Nambe. If Chola and Catherine represent hope, Mchere and Nambe represent despair. They live in a ramshackle wooden hut that leaks when it rains, with 5 children already and another on the way. Mchere works at a bakery, earning so little that his salary can't even buy 2 loaves of bread. Meanwhile, Nambe stays home, burdened by poverty, children, and a husband who, let's just say, if there were a contest for Worst Husband of the Year, Mchere would win hands down.
You're serious?
Now, Mchere is a textbook example of wasted potential. Dirt poor, owing rent, and unable to provide for his family. Yet somehow he always finds money to drink, smoke, and chase women. He's the kind of man who leaves a bar after a quick hookup only to go home and beat his pregnant wife, without even asking what's wrong.
What?
Then, when he finally learns his son Ntolo has been badly stung by bees and fallen from a tree, suddenly he becomes super dad, carrying the boy 8 miles to the hospital in the pouring rain.
OMG!
But the absurdities don't stop there. When Nambe tried starting a small gin business, party members demanded sex in exchange for allowing her to sell. Her husband, instead of protecting her, drank half the gin himself, gave some to his friends, watered down the rest, and single-handedly destroyed her business. When confronted, he said, "I'm the head of the family, I can do whatever I want." Honestly, if stupidity were currency, Mchere would be a billionaire. You see the problem? The men in this book are either violent, selfish, or flat-out ridiculous.
I never thought of it that way before.
Speaking of ridiculous, there's this unforgettable scene a married man is cheating on his wife with a girlfriend. The wife and girlfriend secretly conspire, and one day, the wife shows up pretending to be the girlfriend. They meet in a church. Yes, a church. And the man doesn't even greet her. No hello, no how's your day, nothing. Straight to business, like zero small talk, just pure mechanical passion.
Yeah, boy.
Afterwards, in the darkness, he compliments her beauty, and the wife, still pretending, asks why he never says such things at home. That's when he realizes the trap and bolts, running for his life. I mean, how beastly, how cartoonishly unfeeling can a man get? Not even a good evening in a church rendezvous?
Please leave me alone.
Anyway, back to our main characters. Chola gets wind of a strike brewing at Mchere's bakery. The workers demand better wages and working conditions. The bakery owners try to stall, but the strike leaders insist, no work until things improve. Chola, ever the journalist, decides to cover the story, hoping to use it as the basis of a book. This coverage brings him face to face with Mchere, and their paths intertwine in hospitals, in prisons, and ultimately in tragedy. Meanwhile, Nambe has her own battles. When her son Ntolo is badly hurt, she rushes around looking for help. First, she goes to the priest, because in a broken country, the church is often the only hope. But the priest refuses, claiming he has a scheduled meeting. Instead, he offers to pray for Ntolo, not helpful. Next, she goes to the party chairman, the only man in town with a working car. He refuses too, claiming his car is full of fish. Yes, fish. Your child is dying, but sorry. Too many tilapias in the back seat. If that's not enough, Nambe's struggles escalate. She's ostracized, she moves to her husband's village, and then she's raped by Mchere's cousin, Guapa. Her revenge? Setting him and 4 others on fire. That's the level of darkness this novel drags you into. Meanwhile, Chola's troubles deepen. His journalist friend Dambo is murdered. Chola realizes he's probably next, and he panics, planning to flee into exile. When he suggests Catherine should join him, she asks, "So I should abandon my studies for you?" And Chola explodes in anger, bloodshot eyes, rage, the works. Even his love is painted as passionless and disappointing. Eventually, both Chola and Mchere find themselves in prison, caught up in the state's crackdown on dissenters and strikers. Chola, though never a member of the movement, suddenly emerges as a prison leader, recruiting members and writing letters that get smuggled out and published in international newspapers. Mchere, supposedly a dullard, magically transforms into a hardened activist. It's all a bit rushed, and then, boom. Chola is killed in prison by a murderer named Bonzo. By the end, everything feels compressed. Nambe escapes into exile in just a sentence. Catherine marries Endatero, a lecturer convict, and we're told a manuscript, essentially the story we've been reading, was discovered. A neat fairy tale bow on a messy, tragic package. The book, Smouldering Charcoal, published in 1992 by Tiyambe Zeleza. Now here's where I struggled with this book. On one hand, Zeleza vividly describes poverty, corruption, and the illusion of development. His imagery is sharp. The decay of the city, the hopelessness of Nyala, the way poverty is peeled back layer by layer until you feel the despair in your bones. That part is powerful, no doubt about it. But the biggest problem? The men. Almost every male character is beastly, drunk, selfish, or abusive. Even Chola, the educated journalist who should have been a beacon of hope, gets moments where he's painted as passionless or explosive. It becomes a novel where manhood itself is a caricature, and that's a bit unsettling. And here's the thing. If the genders were reversed, if women were written in such uniformly negative ways, the book would probably be blacklisted as misogynistic. Yet when men are consistently painted as useless, violent, or stupid, the book is hailed as bold social commentary. That double standard is hard to ignore, isn't it? This is why I call Smouldering Charcoal a Misandrist novel. Its so-called social commentary is just so heavy-handed, it reduces men to, well, flat stereotypes. Sure, corruption, dictatorship, and disillusionment are important themes, but when every man is a monster, does that really serve the story, or just, the politics of the time? On top of that, there are some structural flaws. The rushed ending, inconsistencies like umbrellas appearing out of nowhere, and unlikely scenarios, like prison wardens torturing inmates for refusing to eat when they themselves are starving. Or how about Mchere, with only Standard 5 education, suddenly writing these articulate activist letters? Honestly, it feels sloppy, like the novel was just hurried to the finish line. Still, the novel does raise some good questions. What does development really mean? Is it a car assembly plant in a country that can't even produce a hoe? Should leaders focus on basic tools before these ambitious projects? Or is the real issue that leaders trumpet prestige projects while ordinary folks just remain in poverty? And thematically, it's very much part of that African literary tradition of the 60s through the 90s, exposing the failures of independence, critiquing corrupt leaders, and showing how ordinary people suffer. It sits alongside Aikwe Arma's The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born and Ngugi wa Thiong'o's A Grain of Wheat. But unlike those works, it also tries to latch on to 1990s gender equality discourse, slipping into NGO-style narratives where men are the villains and women the heroes. Tiyambe Zeleza, the author, is Malawian. He's a historian, academic, and writer who has written across multiple genres: fiction, essays, and scholarly works. Smouldering Charcoal is his most well-known novel, but he's more influential as an intellectual, producing critical works on African history, politics, and diaspora studies. So here's my take. Smouldering Charcoal is worth reading if you want to experience post-independence African literature and see how writers wrestled with the corruption and decay of the time. But be prepared, it's not subtle. Men are villains, women are victims, turned survivors, and the writing sometimes stumbles under the weight of its own agenda. If you can look past that, you'll still find a novel that captures the suffocating atmosphere of dictatorship, the hopelessness of poverty, and the desperation of those left behind. But for me, it didn't work. It felt more like a political tract disguised as a novel. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.